All right. Oh, looks like it's running. Okay, good. I must have some shoddy internet here at the office. Sorry about that. I'm going to give people just a few seconds to get on. I always like to come on just a minute or two early to check my audio, make sure you guys can hear me. So let me know if you can hear me, because I was talking one time for like 5 minutes before somebody noticed I was. Well, they apparently saw my mouth moving, and I was talking, having a good old time with myself until someone said, am I having audio issues? Am I the only one? Nope, it's me. So hopefully you guys can hear me. This is our first Call Me the Colic that we're doing. It's such a sweet little name. I had a friend that was posting the other day asking, what should I call it? The healthy start or the crap, but a different word people don't tell you, with, calm baby, crying baby. And there's definitely, I have my own, I guess, repertoire of things I wish people would have told me just even prior to getting pregnant, but then even more so after having a baby, not only my body, but also what to do with the baby. So you get so much advice, don't you? I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well, but let me just kind of pop open my slides. I'm going to make my face just a little bit smaller so you can see my slides and read my slides. There'll be a few things to read on there, but mostly just, my talking head. We love seeing babies in the office. Our biggest thing is we just love seeing babies get healthy and be healthy and thrive and eat, sleep, and poop the way that they're supposed to. And we've had an influx of some colicky babies and stress babies and some stress pregnancies and births, which given the times, it's to be expected, right? People are under more stress than ever before, and it really does matter. It matters with our infants, it matters with our children, it matters in, of course, our lives and our marriages. So we see the effects of that stress, and we want to help start it, getting the kids help early, start getting the awareness out early for families to understand that there are options and things that they can do for their child, and stuff they might not even realize, not only colic, but cranial shape, gut health, all the things that people really want their babies to do, sleeping, eating, sleeping, and pooping. Those are the magical things we need to happen. It's obviously feels like a luxury when someone says, oh, I just got such a good baby this go around, when really it's pretty crucial to all of their lives that they are doing the things that they're supposed to do, because it's usually later on in life when we start to rewind the tape and go backwards and say, oh, she was showing signs, or he was showing signs at that time. He was colicky. He was put on special formula. I wasn't able to nurse. He wasn't able to latch. We did have some head shape issues and movement issues in the head and neck. So, or gut issues and pooping issues. And we kind of go backwards and look and say, oh, we didn't actually outgrow this. It grew into something else. And that's the most important message that people need to here. I feel like, I know we get that message a lot of they'll outgrow it, and unfortunately they'll grow into something else, and we just don't even realize that it can be linked to the hyperactivity, to sensory issues, to speech delays, and other things that we see in the office when kids are 3, 4, 5, 6 and above, when the parents are really starting to realize that the motor skills that were slow at 12 to 16 to 18 months walking actually is affecting their learning and their eye-hand coordination later in life. And one of the things that we preach about often is that brain development, movement actually determines brain development. So motor development determines brain development, where our brains are largely mechanoreceptor driven. And that's why when you're looking at motor milestones, they matter a lot for how the brain is doing. So most people know, of course, I have it listed on here, what some of these things that we're talking about are and what it means. And it's pretty vague, right? Just frequent fussiness of an otherwise healthy baby is colic. So some people are like, oh, the baby's kind of colicky. They're a little upset. Maybe they have GERD, or they have silent reflux. They're a happy spitter. I hear that a lot too. They just spit up and they're still happy. And there can definitely be some underlying issues that we need to take a look at, because the body should be able to keep the food in, digest the food, right? Poop the food out. So some stuff to consider in some of the warning signs that the baby is stressed. And often all they can tell us actually is through crying. And really some other things that we'll start to notice is they're not sleeping, or plagocephaly, having that flattened part of their head. And these all really are tied. People might not realize how tied this all is together, but we're going to link it all together for you tonight in this webinar, and really start to paint a bigger picture of what's going on and how to create a really healthy developing baby, which is, you know, ultimately what we want, to be able to grow a healthy child and a healthy teen and a healthy adult, and intervening the earliest you can into helping guide the body into doing what it's designed to do, which is self-heal, self-regulate, be healthy. We're firm believers of that, and we need the right environment to do so. And when they're born in a stressed environment, it's difficult. So I put this cute little post in here because I do remember, even after my first son, I remember crying for 2 weeks holding him. Like, I felt like I wasn't worthy of him. I didn't know what to do with him. I got advice from a lot of people, but he also entered the world not the way I wanted him to enter the world. He entered with a 36-hour labor turned into a cesarean section, and I didn't know the stress that put on his little system. I hadn't thought about it. And once I've got further training and more education on it, and really started reading and watching and doing, and further education on what birth stress can do to a baby, I started to understand what was going on. I started to understand what he was experiencing. And I always say not to blame yourself, because here's our mom life. We're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong. I need to change my diet. I need to put him in a different position on the breast. Oh, my nipples are too big. They're too small. I don't make enough milk. I don't sleep enough. You know, we get so much information, and then we just bog our body down, our system down, our brain down with it, because we're moms and we want the best for our kids. And if we can't blame the baby, we're going to blame ourselves, right? Oh man, I just must have did something wrong. And it's really exhausting. I can't tell you the list of moms, you know, the list that moms will come in with of like, here's what I've tried, right? And you've got 14 different formulas and 15 different diet changes and sleeping positions. And oh my gosh, you know, keeping track of how much water they drank. I'm going to drink it while we're talking about it, and just complete overanalysis, and we just really beat ourselves up about it. So this is not what this webinar is about. It's understanding where stress came from, and knowing that the windshield is much smaller than the rear view mirror, because this is the direction we're going. But often peeking back to say, okay, I understand where it came from, can really be helpful in people understanding that's what my baby went through. Now that makes sense, that they can't stop screaming or crying, or they're not comfortable. They arch their back and they can't digest their food well, and we have to pump their legs in order to get some stool out, or we have to rock them to sleep and bounce them to sleep, and they can't turn their head the right way. They can't eat. I mean, there's just so many things that will start to make sense when we start going through some of this, and really start to digest what can actually occur during not only pregnancy. So I don't talk a whole lot about this, but I'm going to mention it during the pregnancy. If mom is feeling stressed, if mom is taking on more than she should, because whatever you're feeling, the baby's feeling, and that can really set the stage for even a stressful pregnancy, can set the stage for a stressful birth. But it can also start to restrict uterine movement and restrict uterine flow. And we all know, as soon as the baby is experiencing inner uterine growth restraint, they are emergency get the baby out, because we know they have to move and develop. Their brain's going to stop developing in there. They are going to feel stressed in there. And a stressed, uptight mom will do that. We experience that a lot in our office, of calming mom's nervous system in order for her to relax and let go, in order for the baby to get in the right position. I just had a conversation with a mom today about it, and she said, I really am feeling a lot of anxiousness and stress around this baby. But he was transverse. Meaning that he was lying across, and I have my doll, because we're going to talk a little bit about babies and birth and head shape. He was transverse. That means he's across instead of head down, and he was even spending time breech, so face up. And getting her to let go of her stress really helps relax the uterus and the pelvis in order to get the baby into the right spot. So we're going to chat about that as well, and even talk about birth and some of the stress on a baby. There's 60 to 90 pounds of axial tension and traction that's put on an infant's head during the birth process, just with normal vaginal contractions. And I've got a spine here because we talk about this a lot with moms and dads, in ultimate and an optimal pelvic positioning, or the baby in the pelvis. And we really want that baby head down, left side, and I'll tell you in a moment, chin tucked right here like this, in order to twist and come out in this direction. We don't want them spine to spine, face up. This is called the sunny side up, or a posterior birth. We don't want them cockeyed and stuck on mom's pelvis either with this kind of strain. We don't want them, of course, breech. We hear about this all the time, nor do we want them transverse in any way, shape, or form. This is where they need to be. And if you look at the cranial shape on this baby, this is very close and accurate to a human, baby human. And where we want that pressure, when I said chin tucked, is here, in order for the uterus to be able to open up effectively. When we have a posterior birth or malpositioning, sometimes we get the blunt, or we do get the blunt side of the head putting pressure down, or a head that's tipped and tilted and putting pressure here, instead of a nice, even, smooth delivery and productive contraction. So I'm sure many of you have seen the analogy of what a cervix is when they're talking about a cervix facing. That's it thinning out. Here, when they say you're, 10% effaced, 90% effaced, we want this cervix to thin out, and then we need it to open up 10 centimeters in order to have this baby. So head down, chin tucked, left side is the most productive, because most women have a clockwise contraction of that uterus. So in order to have the uterus not only operating efficiently and effectively, we need that nervous system operating efficiently and effectively, and not stressed, not contracted in one side or the other, and the baby in the right spot. And that can sometimes be tedious. And other times it's the way it's designed to be. When your body is right, the baby can be in the right position. There are a few times when the baby doesn't get in the right position, and that's because the cord is short, or the placenta is in the way, or mom is not able to calm down and relax. And those can also be really long labors and deliveries. But that pressure on the head and neck, which we're going to look at during vaginal births, can be 60 to 90 pounds of pressure, which is a ton, especially when it's not in the right position. And adding in assistance will really start to interfere with the process. So I've got a video of a baby, and this is a non-emergency cesarean section that I show at many of my workshops. So if you've been to them before, you've probably seen this video before. But to me, it's really important to get a good picture of what's going on. So I'm gonna make this a large screen. I want you guys to watch this.
Come on, buddy.
Hang on a second here. Let me change the layout. Let me toggle here. Two shakes. There we go. Okay. Hang on here. Let me get the video back up.
Getting irritated. Oh, there you go, little fella.
Come on, buddy.
All right.
Okay, there's a vacuum.
Ears of a girl. Ears of a girl. Make you cute for the camera.
Oh, man. Keep coming back. You did good.
There you go.
All right.
Look at those big old testicles, though.
Okay. So I'm gonna let that video finish out there.
Yeah.
Well, he sure had a big head here. Yeah, that was the problem. The head.
And I know I've watched that video 1,000 times, and every single time that I watch that video, it gets me, because you just don't realize. And I had, like I said, I had a cesarean section birth with my oldest and my youngest, and I didn't realize the amount of stress that was put on his spine, the dural sheaths around his spinal cord. It was a really big deal for him, and he wasn't able to turn his head. He wasn't able to latch. I'm going to move forward to the next slide here. And I have a picture here of another infant being taken out by the hands. The other one was a vacuum, just to even demonstrate some of the stress that's put on the neck, head and neck as well. And when we look at that and say, you know what, we would just never in a million years ever allow anyone to touch our babies like that, moments after birth, let alone during that birth process, if we knew that that's what was going on. I'm going to put my head here so you guys can see me. I'm sorry about the toggling back and forth. We would never allow anybody to touch our infants by their head or neck. It's just something that we are constantly in protection of. Whenever we're holding the baby and passing the baby around, we're like, oh, watch that head or neck. They don't have the neck muscles, yet the baby hadn't touched gravity. And not only had it maybe experienced a lot of stress like this, unproductive labor, now they had to be pulled out like this. And when we look at an infant in our office and we look at someone who has been through a stressful pregnancy or a stressful birth like that, maybe there was an induction, which is very hard on the baby. Maybe there was forceps or a cesarean section, or maybe it's just really unproductive pushing on the back, a mom on her back for a baby, which doesn't allow the pelvis to open up well. It doesn't allow gravity to work with the woman. We're the only mammals who don't stand up to birth. Many mammals use gravity, all of them but us, in order to birth, to allow that gravity to help the baby out. So there's a lot of really, unfortunately, misconceptions out there on birth. I mean, I know we're supposed to think that we just lay on our back and not feel anything and the baby's there, but we don't think about the pain or injuries that's brought onto the baby. And the only way they can tell us is through tears, is through inability to latch, inability to digest their food, an inability to rotate their heads, even to the point of a flat spot of plagocephaly that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So let me, my layout doesn't want to change here. So I guess I'm gonna have to move my face down in order to show you my next slide through here. They did a research study as well that showed that 99, and that's what this research study is, 99 out of 100 births did have a form of neurological stress and a neurological stress component to them. And of course, the ones with more stress during the pregnancy and more stress during the birth had higher degrees of neurological interference with them. But this wasn't even a chiropractor who had done this research study. It was DOs and MDs who looked at it and said, okay, there's something to this stressful birth. And part of what we analyze in the office is the brain and how well it's able to receive information from the nervous system, and head shape, which is really, really important. We've got 12 cranial nerves that are attached to the brain and their little spinal cord. So when you're looking back at some of these slides back here, the stress and strain that's put on that little spinal cord that's right there, we know that they're affecting cranial nerves, and there's 12 of them, but 2 of them actually leave the cranial vault. And we're going to talk about the most important one here just momentarily because it runs the gut. But when you're looking at this cranial nerve 11, it is part of rotation. Head and neck rotation is going to control this muscle right here. It helps the baby turn his head and nurse and latch. And we've seen babies that have neck contractures, or shortly after birth, mom's like, oh my gosh, he's so strong, he's already holding his head up. That's not necessarily a good sign. That's a sign that there's stress stuck inside the system. Just like if you were to injure your shoulder or knee, but that if you were to hurt your shoulder, pull it too far at a joint, or get it yanked or pushed or jammed, the first thing you're going to do, of course, is feel pain. And the second thing you're going to do is see inflammation, and you're really not going to want to move it because of the irritation that's there. And it's the same with infants, but even more so when we're talking about the delicate fibers of that spinal cord. And we're looking at these cranial nerves that are controlling all of the muscles of the face and swallowing, latching, sight, vision. I mean, there's so much that's developing. And from birth to 3, babies are making 1 million new neurological connections a second. 1 million new neurological connections a second. That is wild. There's so much happening inside of their little brains. They are taking in so much information at this time. They are growing so many organ systems. They are making so many neurological connections that we would hate to interfere with that process. We would hate to see a baby trying to have the compromised nervous system trying to navigate this world. There's enough stress already, for God's sakes. Let's not add to it or not remove stress that's been built up inside of the system. We just had another little dude in here. He's 7. is he 7? Anyways, he still has cranial flattening in his head. They've been working on it his entire life. He actually had this sort of head shape, and it puts a lot of pressure in the frontal lobe over here, interfering with the brain's ability to do what it's designed to do. And he's been having some cranial sacral work his entire life to help open up these sutures. So when you're looking here, all these cranial bones, there's several bones that are part of the head and skull, and when they are being compressed to the point of well, a couple different things. Sometimes they can be compressed abnormally, like I was showing you earlier in the birth. They can be compressed for too long, or they can also be not compressed at all in a scheduled cesarean section. They're designed to be compressed and to overlap, and once they come out the vaginal canal, to kind of pop back into place, and they kind of oscillate there for a while and find a new place. Well, they can get jammed up and locked up during that birth process, and they can also stay that way when there's a neck injury and the baby's unable to rotate his head and neck, and that will cause the baby to favor one side of the head or the other, turning their head to one side or the other and keeping it that way. It's starting to flatten one part of the skull out. So we work on that as well, and it's really twofold. It's getting down to the source of the stress to allow the cranial nerves to flow, allow the brain to get correct information, take the stress off the nervous system, and allow the brain to develop the way that it was designed to. So this other cranial nerve that we're going to chat about is called the vagus nerve, and that one is, if you can see, I know this is a really small picture for you. This is a picture of the entire gut here. When people talk about that gut-brain connection, we are talking about the vagus nerve. It runs the upper 2/3 of the gut. It is often compromised in a stressful pregnancy, a stressful birth, and can really start to lack tone, is what we call it. So we'll have some vagal nerve tone issues, and there's a lot of research around that as well for kids that are having issues with sensory later on, and their ability to regulate themselves, as well as their body's ability to digest food, which is often what we'll find in the little ones. Are really stressed in their ability to digest their food, and all of their organs and glands are being controlled with their digestion, are being affected, along with liver and kidneys and lungs and heart. There's so many components that vagus nerve is running, and it really runs what we call the brake pedal. So the calming effect in the body. So our nervous system has two modes of operation. They've got a fight or flight stress mode. That is the one that does the tears, it does the crying, it does the survival mechanism. And then we have the calming parasympathetic, which is what the vagus nerve largely runs that side of the nervous system. That vagus nerve and that parasympathetic nervous system is on while we're sleeping, which is why infants and children require so much more rest than we do. I mean, newborns should be sleeping like 22, 23 hours a day because they have so many of those neurological connections that are going on. They have so much parasympathetic that's needed. And when they're missing out on that, their organs and glands are missing out on being able to rest and digest appropriately, grow appropriately, operate appropriately. And we'll often see that big time change with that under chiropractic care in our office. This picture that I popped up on here, talking about what do you do? My baby is colicky. My baby's got a misshapen head. My baby has digestive issues. They're crying a lot. They're not sleeping a lot. The number one thing I say to do is we've got to calm it. We've got to calm the body, and we need to stop feeding that stress response. That stress response, that what we call a subluxation as a chiropractor, is that big red word right here in the center. That's the stress that's been stuck there from the birth process or possibly during the pregnancy. It's the built up stress that's in their nervous system. And what we'll end up doing is feeding that stress response through physical, chemical, and emotional stressors. And all of these start to add up, but they cause interference, as you can see, irritation and inflammation inside of the nervous system, inside the brain, inside of their bodies, and they're not living up to their God-given potential. They're not able to just eat, sleep, and poop. Infants and children aren't able to grow, and what we'll start to see is more of a problem progress later. Like I said earlier, they don't outgrow something, they'll just grow into something else, and often it'll be ear infections or tonsillitis and sleep apnea, ear tubes, antibiotics, gut problems, sensory issues, eczema. I mean, we just see this escalation, focus issues, behavior issues, nighttime, bedwetting, And it just continues to grow. It might turn into allergies and asthma. And pretty soon we've got a really stressed child dealing with a lot of components, and we haven't gone down to the source or the root of that nervous system, of that brain, and the stress that it's experiencing and the healing it's been unable to do. I often say, and this might sound a little bit harsh, I'll say, we don't necessarily care how you feel. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people think they go to the chiropractor because they don't feel well, something hurts. We care how you heal. If your body's unable to heal, there's a problem. Your body should be self-healing. It should be self-regulating. It should be healthy. Let's figure out what's interfering with that process. Let's figure out what the disturbance it is inside of the body that's interfering with the body's process to be able to do that. And often we'll find stress stuck inside of that nervous system, and it needs to be released. It needs to be worked on. It needs to have gentle, safe, and effective chiropractic adjustments, which is what we've been doing for 13 years in our office, and seeing miracles. We see happy babies. This little dude was in today who is 9 months old and neurologically sound. He eats, sleeps, poops. He started crawling. Now he's standing, trying to take his first steps. Great eye engagement. He has wonderful communication with his eyes. He will straight up look somebody in the eyes. He engages and smiles with people. I mean, he does all the things that are really, really appropriate for a baby of his size. And he also eats dirt. He digs through his mom's plants and eats dirt. He's ruined every one of her pots in the house, which is a great story for this little guy. But, a lot of people come in and they're afraid to have their child adjusted by a chiropractor. They've seen all these YouTube videos of, neck popping and twisting. And it's really just, he's getting adjusted right there. You can barely tell anything's happening. We know as pediatric chiropractors how gentle that we need to be on the spine. We're using body weight in order to adjust the baby by holding. Those bones are mostly cartilaginous. They start developing and ossifying and turning into bone later on in life and in development. But it is really about taking tension off of that spinal cord. It's really about being able to feed the body and the brain well, and gentle chiropractic adjustments have been just an amazing, amazing thing in our office. Such a blessing to see kids who weren't able to walk. We have so many stories, if you're on our Facebook page, of kids who had severe allergies, who weren't able to eat food, stop and be able to eat their regular food. Anaphylactic shock were even going into, kids with body covered head to toe in eczema, all the things that our body should be able to process that they weren't. It was able to catch up through chiropractic care. So people ask, well, how often do you do it? When should I get my baby scan? We've come to home births and had the baby adjusted right out of the womb. We've had people say, we're on our way home from the hospital, we're going to stop in and get the baby adjusted. And we have other people say, we had a peaceful birth, we're just going to relax for a week or two, and then we're going to come out and get the baby checked and adjusted. We are going to scan them. We check for neurological stress to make sure we can measure the stress that they can't tell us about. We can then measure and remove it and get them on a plan in order to have the healthy nervous system that we want them to have. And people, I just had a conversation with a patient not long ago who's one of the spouse didn't support it and the pediatrician didn't support it, which is a hard battle, especially when you're in a patient in the office and you've seen lots of children get adjusted. You've seen miracles in here. You follow us on Facebook. You watch miracles inside of our office, and you don't have the support of it. And it's usually because that person has been misinformed about chiropractic. They've been misinformed on what it does. They still think it's about neck pain, back pain, and headaches. They still think we're popping bones and worried about pain when really we're worried about function. We're worried about healing. We're worried about the brain and the body communicating effectively. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at stress in the spinal cord. We're looking at dural tension inside of that spinal cord. That's when people talk about craniosacral therapy, where they're trying to work at the top and the bottom of the head and neck, pumping cerebral spinal fluid around in order for that child to get a better communication between the brain and the body. Chiropractic care for infants is just that gentle. It's just so effective. It's such a beautiful thing. And I know that some people say, I don't have the support that I need. And maybe that spouse needs to come in and watch a webinar. Maybe that spouse needs to come in and watch a baby get adjusted. Maybe they just need to sit down and have a conversation. Maybe they need to talk to another parent who's been through it, who's seen it, who lived through the fears of bringing their baby into a chiropractor because they had the same fear that you did, the same fear that that spouse did, and the same misconceptions. I had a mom who was a beautiful story, but her last baby, number 6, was a cesarean section. And she wasn't able to nurse her latch, and someone said, bring him to purpose-driven chiropractic. Well, she was hesitant. She was nervous. She didn't know what we were going to do to the baby. And I don't normally do this, but I came into the scan room because I had some time and I wanted to watch the scan and see where the stress was, which is exactly where we thought it was going to be, in that upper cervical spine and a little bit in that sacrum. And I had her put the baby on the breast and I started working on her. And mom said, I absolutely couldn't even believe the difference. I felt her latch change as she was being worked on, get stronger, more effective. The baby's body was relaxing, and I didn't even know you were doing anything. I couldn't even tell that you were adjusting her. That's how gentle it is. That's how effective it is. And of course, she, had her world rocked, had this baby that was 6 weeks old and number 6, who she'd been able to breastfeed all her kids, start to nurse and latch, and brought in her other kids who were having sensory issues, brought in a bedwetter, one of our other children who were still having accidents at a, I think he was like 7 or 8 at the time, and then brought in her sensory child as well, who was put on the spectrum and told that he wasn't able to go to the private school that his siblings were attending, which was a really big deal for that family, and made a really big change for them when they were under care. All of their body systems and all of the stress that they were experiencing started to what we call dissipate and leave. Things were calm. The bodies were able to self-regulate. It spent more time in parasympathetic catching up and less time in fight or flight. And, of course, the whole family's under care now because she knows that she wants her family to have nervous systems that are operating free of stress, free of interference, so their kids can have the best chance at life. And we have a lot of families that find us that way. Another family, actually, same thing, 5 kids, and the last one was unable to nurse her latch. And just bringing them here, she ended up bringing her 2 younger sensory kids as well and have their life changed around, and mom's under care as well. So we have lots of families that are here as families and here able to share, and babies that you can watch get adjusted if there's some fears that need to be calmed and need to be at least put at ease, because I always say you need to feel comfortable and know that this is the right place for your baby. This is the right place for your family, and that you are receptive to that, because when there's resistance there's going to be some stress that's there. And, our babies feel everything. We all feel everything. We just don't really realize that your nervous system takes in information at the rate of 300 trillion bits of information every second, which is wild. But we're consciously aware of 50 of those. So there's a lot reaching our brain that we don't know about, but a lot that we start to block off. So babies are much more intuitive. You've all seen a baby who will scream and cry when they don't feel comfortable around someone. And that's because they haven't blocked that emotion yet, that their body's saying something's wrong here. Which is great when we're working on a baby, because we know that those babies look deep into your soul and into your eyes and make that connection to say, is this a safe place? And once they realize that, it's amazing what those chiropractic adjustments can do and how you watch their lives get changed around. So you've got to come. You have a friend with a colicky baby, and I know how stressed that makes mom. If you've got a friend with a baby struggling with plagocephaly and they're thinking about putting a helmet on their head, if you've got a friend whose kid is still suffering with GI issues or allergies and gut problems, eczema, they need to come in. They need to come in and at least get a neurological scan to see, is there some stress that's been stuck here from pregnancy or birth that needs to be removed so this child can live their very best life. And normally, if you come in off the streets, it's $189. If you are a very complicated case, which we have several of those, that's $300. And that's for the doctor to look over your case, to run a neurological scan, sit down and talk to you, and then also make a care plan based around your goals, based on the stress that's there, and be able to say, all right, I can confidently tell you this is what it's going to take. This is the cost it's going to be. This is how many times you need to be here, and come when you're ready. So I just saw the new patient special pop up on there. There's an offer at the end of this for you to bring your colicky baby in, or to bring anybody in who needs their nervous system looked at. That's $100 instead of $300 or $189, which saves you some money in the front end in order to see, is this what's going on with your baby? We want to help you We're here for you. Please ask us any questions that you have. Call our team, they know a lot. Or even if you need to schedule a consultation, do that as well. Thanks for joining me.